Welcome to another episode of Growth Hacker TV. I'm Bronson Taylor, and today I have Peep Laja with us. Pep, thanks for coming on the program.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, I think we're going to have a really interesting conversation. You are a conversion optimization expert, and you've done a lot. You've been doing digital marketing for over 10 years in Europe, Middle East, Central America, US. You ran a software company in Europe, an SEO company in Panama, a real estate portal in Dubai, and you've worked with an international nonprofit. Does that about sum it up?
That's about it, yeah.
Yeah.
Now I've mixed all those experiences and, I've become a conversion optimizer. That's what I've been doing for the last full-time, like only conversion optimization for the last 3 years. But of course, I was also already doing conversion optimization back in 2006 while working on my portal in Dubai. But I didn't call it conversion optimization.
Yeah, no, that's great. And you actually have a company, an agency, Marketect, and so businesses come to you when they need help with their conversion optimization, right?
Correct. So anything from startups to e-commerce sites to whatever transactional sites. Well, because SEO dials and SEM dials, they've been turned to the max. PPC costs so expensive, SEO increasingly harder to do. So the only way to increase profits is really conversion, getting your traffic to buy more, sign up more. So that's when they come to us, because conversion optimization is not an art. It's not about, let's run this test. It's a science. It's a methodology. It's a process. And not many people are very skilled at it yet.
Yeah, I think you're right. When I look online, you're one of the few people that have really carved out a niche for conversion optimization. That's where you're going to be, and that's what you're going to be about. And when we talked to people before this interview, everyone had nothing but great things to say about your abilities and what you actually did for their sites. So I'm actually excited to kind of get into some of the details. But tell us first, at kind of a high level, how do you define conversion optimization? What is it?
It's a great question. And there's no one single true answer to this. It's a mix between problem solving. A customer has a problem, and do you help them solve it or not with the least amount of friction as possible? And it's also about user experience. People people buy a lot of stuff from Amazon, not necessarily that their layout is the best or the call to actions are the best. It's because they've had so many good experiences with it. It's so easy to do returns, tons of reviews. It all adds up to, a nice customer experience. And that, drives their sales. So conversion optimization is part management consulting, meaning how can we create awesome experiences for people that buy from us? And two, how can we lower friction in the purchasing process to help solve problems, help people get what they want.
Yeah, and it kind of goes back to what you already said, that it's not an art, that it really is a science. You mentioned Amazon. Amazon's not going to get any awards for their UI and UX, but they have tons of sales because they've really turned the levers of what works scientifically, and that's kind of the way you see the world, right?
Right, exactly right. And then Amazon has tapped out on traffic. It's growing, but they're in their phase where they're optimizing for more revenue from a single buyer. So any new improvements you see in Amazon, it's all about how to get more money out of you.
Now, as a conversion optimization expert, do you actually think about or care about new traffic sources or getting more traffic, or do you go into a company and say, you already have traffic, that's done, let me optimize it?
Well, of course I care about traffic because you can't run statistically significant tests without traffic, so you need to have some. And we're all impatient in this world. We all want to test as fast as possible. So again, traffic is necessary here. But so many companies are pouring down money, on the AdWords hole or SEO, and while they could actually invested money in conversion optimization, get their site convert better, and then their customer acquisition costs go lower, they have more money now to buy AdWords ads or whatnot. So it's a cycle. So if your site converts better, you can also afford to buy more traffic.
Yeah, it's interesting. The more I think about growth and growth hacking and marketing and all these things, it seems like there's traffic and there's conversion, and you cannot ignore either one. I mean, it's
No.
just two sides of the same coin. And the companies that are really going to kill it are the ones that are going to do both extremely well because they can pay more for AdWords, they can pay more for high quality inbound content because they got their costs down, like you just said, through
Exactly
conversion.
right.
They really work together, don't they?
Exactly right. So it's all about cost per conversion. Like how much do you pay to acquire a customer? And if you can spend much less than a competitor, well, that's how you dominate.
Now you mentioned that traffic matters because you need enough to do statistical relevant tests and things like that.
Right.
When should a company start thinking about conversion optimization? Day one, they put up a website. Let's look and
Well,
compare
conversion
numbers.
optimization, yes, day one is absolutely critical. That even when you're thinking about the design of your website, that it's built from ground up to sell.
Yeah.
So when to start doing tests is another matter. It depends on two factors, like A, how much traffic do you have, and B, what's your conversion rate. So if you're asking for money right away, your conversions are going to be in single digits typically, like 1%. So if you have, 5,000 visitors a month and 1% of them buy, how many is that in absolute numbers? In order to run one statistically valid test, you need at least, let's say, ballpark of 100 conversions per variation, A and B. So 200 transactions per month. Now, how much traffic do you need to get 200 transactions per month? Sometimes, it takes you 6 months if you're new. So then it is not reasonable to do A/B testing. You can do other stuff instead.
Yeah.
But if that math works out, that you can do at least one test every 30 days with significant results,
Yeah.
then, you should go for testing.
So when you start out, you're thinking about conversion optimization, but you're just thinking at a high level, best practices, let's build it to convert, let's do what we think will work. And then at some point you have the traffic and the conversions to actually run some tests and get more scientific about it. So you're thinking about the whole time, but you drill down a little later.
Right, exactly. So testing helps you validate ideas. It's kind of, lean startup and conversion optimization, very similar concepts. It's like you have an hypothesis to your design and copy as to what will work. You put it out there, real life traffic, test what works. So with A/B testing, you can just validate ideas faster and multiple ideas.
Yeah. Now here's the question that I'm really excited to ask you because I think this is going to help get inside your mind. When a new client comes to you or when you start a new project of your own, I'm sure there's some kind of either implicit or explicit checklist that you're going through with the site. And I want to know, what is it you look at first? What do you look at second? Are you looking at the headline first? Are you looking at the size of the elements?
Right.
How do you see the world? Walk me through kind of the order of importance with conversion optimization when you see a site.
Right. So first thing is, what I call a heuristic analysis. So I walk through the site, I walk through the funnel or homepage and pricing page, features page, try to put myself in the shoes of the user, and I mark down the URLs and what's the flow like through the site, and then each page that I look at, I assess it for several things. I assess it for instant reaction for design, like, oh man, this blows, this looks like my grandma designed it, or versus, oh, that's nice, because people make design decisions within 50 milliseconds. And if we dislike the design, if it looks amateur, crappy, then instantly the amount of friction the user feels gets higher. You're less likely to give them money. So it's like subconscious. So the design, so pure gut feeling, emotional reaction. And then I assess it for clarity of value proposition. Value proposition is the offer, the copy on the website. The offer, like, our software helps you solve this problem. So the user needs to identify, yes, this is for me. I understand how I benefit, and I understand why I should use this service instead of the other guys. So assessing value proposition, how clear it is. Is it jargonish? Is it clear? Do I even understand what the site is about? So that's number one. Two, I assess it for friction. Like, let's say that They make maybe the copy makes all kinds of claims, but there's no proof to back it up. They say we're number one. Well, according to whom? And maybe the sign up flow is ridiculous, like 7 steps and 25 fields, and so that kind of stuff. What's the friction? Then distraction. The best websites focus on a single goal. Every page on your website should have a single goal. I want user to do this on this page. You can have secondary goals too, but one primary goal. So I assess, do they have a clear primary goal? And what are the things on the page that don't contribute directly to people taking that one action? If there's a lot, like maybe there are I don't know, an overload of testimonials and news and, our history and partners and whatever, like stuff that don't make people more likely to click on a button, then ideally that stuff should be removed. Now, of course, in conversion optimization, there are no rules that this works every single time on every single website. So this is just the beginning. So when I assess value proposition, friction, distraction, what I do is that I mark down. I'm taking notes, as I'm going through the website. I'm marking down areas of interest or problem areas. And now everything that I see is my subjective view on what I think what are the problems. So this is not the absolute truth. So now I go on and I collect data to compare my findings with what the data says. So it's just the problems that I identify tell me where to look for problems. So what kind of data do I need to gather and assess to understand if something is really a problem or not? So let's say a homepage is super, super long. And I'm thinking it's a lot of distraction, a lot of useless content. So I increases the load speed of the website, because speed is also a factor. So my hypothesis is if we had less stuff on the page, people would click more, take more action, this one primary action, click on the button. Now, how do I make sure whether the page length is actually a problem? Of course, running a split test is the best way, but if I don't have enough traffic, I would add a mouse tracking software like Session Cam or ClickTail or Crazy Egg, one of those. And they give me scroll map information. I'll see how far down people scroll. That's one way. Also, I would look at in Google Analytics, when you open up behavior and your list of pages, the page that I'm looking at, I would click on that URL and click on navigation summary, and I would see all the links that people click on from that particular page. And I would see if anybody is clicking on the links that are way, way, way below, that says if people care about this stuff. So there are many different points how I could assess whether the page length could be an issue or not without A/B testing.
Yeah, I mean, that's an incredible answer. And, in some interviews, there's those moments that need to be listened to over and over. I want people to go back and listen to that over and over, because I think you just described what you do for a living. I mean, obviously, there's a lot of details to it. Obviously, there's a lot of skill and expertise that goes into those things. But at a high level, that is what you do. You look at a site, you have gut impressions, you work through the flow, and then you test to see if your hypothesis is correct with real data. That's it, right?
Exactly. And there are two types of data. Well, what I just mentioned is quantifiable data, so analytics, heat map data, and so on. But there's the other side of it, which is even more important, is the qualitative data. So user interviews, user surveys, all their custom development work, user testing. Yeah. So all of the stuff. So once I identify all the problem areas, I put together, for instance, for user testing, I put together a user testing plan that I would have people walk through and complete tasks that are going through those friction areas, and I'm just seeing if they're experiencing the same friction that I'm thinking they will or not.
Now, you said qualitative is more important. You're a conversion optimization expert, and yet you actually think qualitative trumps quantitative. So why is that?
So the thing is that qualitative leads to more insight. When we look at Google Analytics, we see what people are doing, but we don't see why they're doing it.
Mm-hmm.
So
Okay.
that is so conversion optimization is we have a customer theory. That is the main thing that we are doing with conversion optimization. Yes, we are going for uplifts and increases in conversion, but that's actually a byproduct of improving customer theory, validated learning, as Eric Ries says,
There you
right?
go. Back to the
So we're
similarities.
always after learning, improving customer theory. What works for this customer, what this customer does or doesn't want, and so on. So qualitative surveys, user tests, interviews, they give us more insight,
Mm-hmm.
so we can understand why something is working or not, and then we implement. And quantifiable, just you know, it helps us basically double check whether our conclusions or takeaways from the qualitative data are correct.
Yeah, that's great. And I'm so glad you're saying that because a lot of the people watching this, they just want to stay in the data. They don't want to watch somebody use their site when that might be the moment of breakthrough of, oh,
Right.
that's why this is happening. But we may have never gotten there with the data alone, even though it's in the data.
Right. So in my line of work, I'm never working with a single source of data. So what they tell me in user surveys, I compare that to my analytics data. I compare that to user tests. I compare that to mouse tracking, heat maps,
Mm-hmm.
whatever other data I have available. So it's always coming together.
Mm-hmm.
Plus, of course, A/B tests. A/B tests are for learning. So all of this, I look at the data. I form a hypothesis
Mm-hmm.
as to, hey, based on what the users told me and what I see in analytics, I think doing these changes with lower friction and minimize distraction and improve clarity of the value proposition. So I create a treatment and run a test, and as is often the case, it loses. My winning treatment based on
Uh-huh.
all these insights loses. So what do you do now? Oh well, back to the drawing board. No. So you need to segment test data. So it's very important. So guys who use Optimizely or Visual Website Optimizer for their tests, you need to set up. You need to tick the box that says integrate with Google Analytics. This particular test. So it sends custom variable information into Google Analytics, and now when you look at the test results, let's say that A converts at 4% and B at 3%. Now you apply segments on these test results and you say, hey, whoa, my losing version actually converts better for new visitors. Just returning visitors, is worse. Or there are, many other segments. So always look at segments, and that's where the insights are in the segments. And that's, you improve your customer theory, run a follow-up test. It all happens all the time when we start optimizing a client site, run a test, first test loses, maybe
Mm-hmm.
second test, no difference. Only with third, fourth test on the same page, second, fourth iteration, we get, suddenly, 50%, or whatever.
Yeah, that's really encouraging to hear that you still fail at the first test and maybe the second, and
Yeah.
that experience is not abnormal when we have the same experience. And this is kind of a perfect segue into an article that you recently wrote called 11 Mistakes That You See in A/B Testing All the Time. And I was reading this the other day, and I thought this is so good. I mean, this is like a clinic on A/B testing, and you actually already
Hmm.
mentioned one of them. Kind of doing the same test over and over on the same page there. But let's walk through these mistakes and talk about them a little bit.
Yeah.
The first one is A/B tests are called early. So what do you mean when an A/B test is called early, and that's a mistake?
Yeah. So you set up an A/B test, A versus B, and B starts winning. It's like, oh, and the Optimizely or whatever says, it's at 75% confidence that B is going to win. And so, oppa! So stop the test, implement version B, make it that the default version, and run a new test. So now you called it early. Your statistical confidence was only at 75%, which is not enough.
See,
You
that,
should
that
never
sounds
call
like
a
it would
test.
be enough, right? I mean, to just a
Yeah, but
layman, it sounds so
think about
high.
it this way: 50% is flipping a coin. So
Hmm.
75% is just slightly better than flipping a coin.
Yeah, it makes
And
sense.
also, we're always dealing with sample sizes. So statistical confidence, p-value, is only one factor here. You don't want to call a test before it's 95% confidence or more higher.
Hmm.
But you also want to look at the absolute conversions, not visits, but conversions.
Hmm.
You want a minimum of 100 conversions per variation before you because it's optimized, the Visual Website Optimizer and other tools, they also lead you astray. So it's like, you have, let's say, 27 conversions on one and 32 on the other one, and they might already say, hey, this is statistically significant. But, from experience, if you just give it more time, you let more traffic flow the same test, the numbers can completely change. I have seen plenty times a test that it says, it's 99% confidence that this will win. It actually ends up losing if you just give more traffic to the test.
Yeah.
So it's very, very important that at the minimum 100 conversions per variation, ideally 250 or higher. And also, if you're a high traffic site, another factor to consider is how many days has the test run. So you should not let a test run less than 7 days, and you should actually test in weekly cycles.
Why is that?
The thing is that days are not brothers. Every day is different, and you have fluctuation in your conversion rate on a daily basis.
Okay.
So your Thursday might convert 2 times better than Friday, because on Friday people go partying, they don't buy your product. So now if you end your test on a Thursday, it's like on a high note, it's like, yeah, awesome. But if you had run it one more day, new data would come in. So if you start your test on Monday, you should always end it on a Sunday. So you have a full week. And if within the first week you don't have 100 conversions per variation, you don't have 95% confidence, you let it run another 7 days, and then another 7 days, and another 7 days. So you always test weeks at a time.
Yeah.
The week, of course, for some businesses, the cycle is different. So you need to look at your Google Analytics traffic, and you see these curves,
It's predictable.
So you measure that curve. Sometimes that curve is not exactly a week. It typically is, but sometimes that's 10 days. Sometimes it's 2 weeks. So that's your business cycle. So you also always need to test one business cycle at a time.
Yeah.
So that is so if you call tests early, basically what ends up happening is that you think version B1, while in fact there's a high chance that it would have lost had you given it more traffic. Now you come up with this insight. Oh, well, version B1, so that means our customers are like this and this and this, while you're making wrong conclusions. And then you run follow-up tests, using these insights that you got that are actually wrong, and you end up wasting, many months of work and tests because your customer theory is actually wrong.
Wow.
So that is a problem. And I see one thing all the time with startups. They test a lot, which is great. They have the test, driven mentality, but they call the tests early all the time. So after 12 months, after running 25 tests, their conversion rate is exactly the same like it was a year ago.
Which means something's wrong.
Something is wrong. Actually, even though their tests were winning, there's no actual improvement in the conversion rate.
Wow.
So that comes from implementing versions that actually didn't win. And I work with startups. Sometimes they're bored. Their investors are like, "We need more progress, faster, faster, faster." So they have they feel the pressure to call tests early. So also startup founders, marketers, they need to educate their board, whoever is cracking the whip, to explain that we can't test faster. We test as fast as we can, but we can't sacrifice data that we if we call a test early and it's we declare the loser the winner, then we actually end up wasting more time.
Yeah, it's counterproductive. Now, you mentioned that Visual Website Optimizer and Optimizely will lead you astray, and that's partly because they have inbuilt limits in their software where they think 100 visits or 1,000 visits is enough to call a test winner, when really, if you just go by their kind of set numbers, you won't have enough traffic because you're saying you need 100 conversions on each test before you should call it, and it needs to be at 95%.
Right. So, of course, significance is a complicated issue. There are no absolute rules. The 100 conversions per
It's a rule of thumb.
variation is not a universal rule. It's a ballpark. It's a very good ballpark to go by. So they use a set of formulas, and they don't lead you astray on purpose. Although some people say they do, because they want you to get addicted to tests and then pay their monthly fee. I don't believe that's true, but So you just need to be a savvy tester I understand that statistics was not your favorite subject in college, but need to brush up, spend half a day learning about p-values and sample sizes and that kind of stuff.
Yeah. So the first mistake was A/B tests are called early. The second mistake was they're not run for full weeks for all the
Right.
reasons. Brothers aren't days aren't brothers. The third mistake that you see is A/B split testing is done even when they don't have enough traffic, and that's kind of the
Right.
theme of our conversation so far, really. So I don't know if
Yeah,
you want
yeah,
to add
yeah.
much to
So,
that.
so if you're an early stage startup, you don't have a lot of traffic, and you want to be data driven. It's like, hey, yeah, let's run tests. So actually, your monthly conversions are like, 20 transactions per month or 30. So even if your version B is 15% better than version A, so instead of 25 transaction per month, now you're getting 27. I mean, you don't notice that actually in A/B test. Plus, the sample size has to get really, really huge before you can call the test. So meaning it will take you 2 more years to run this test.
Yeah.
And that's a wasted time.
Yeah.
So as a startup, you don't have much time. You need to do something. So as a startup, you need to calculate the needed sample size beforehand, and that will tell you how many days this test would run. There are many tools online for this. Just Google it. So I would say that if one test takes longer than 60 days, I mean, it's not worth it. I
Yeah.
usually go for 30 days, but I mean, sometimes more than 30 days is all right for a test as well. So what you have to do is advocate something non-scientific.
Okay.
And because we're in the business of making money, not in the business of science, right? So I advocate, in this case, sequential testing. So what that means is that you have your version A of your website, and you still do all the data gathering, analytics, user surveys, heat maps, interviews. You develop a hypothesis, design a treatment, and now you switch to live. So version B is now the default. Version A nowhere to be seen. And what you're going for is instant improvement, something that you can right away see either in your number of signups or cash on your bank account.
Okay.
So if you were doing 25 transactions per month and now you're doing 75 with this new one, you know it's better. You don't know exactly how is it 35% or 200% better? It doesn't matter. It's making you more money. So, and that's why also the version B, the treatment that you put out there, it has to be radically different. Don't change meager things like, oh, let's change the color of the button or the wording, call to action on this button. That's not going to give you a 200% lift. You need to go for radical, bold, completely new approaches if you want to see a result that you will notice in your bank account right away.
Yeah, it seems like startups, they think they're Amazon, right? And they want to test little changes to where the button is or where they put the reviews, when really, for a startup, they don't have the data to know if it matters. And they need to, like you said, just make these huge, radical changes that
Right.
instantly either have more money in the bank account or less, and that's your A/B test.
Right, exactly. So you test radical approaches first, and when you find one radical approach that seems to be way better, significantly, noticeably better than others, now you start optimizing that one with smaller changes later on.
Yeah, no, it makes a lot of sense. And the fourth mistake that you see is that tests are not based on a hypothesis. And you've mentioned hypothesis a number of times already, and then you move into treatment. But why do you have to have a hypothesis before a treatment? What does that do for you?
Right, right. So, as I said earlier, we're improving our customer theory. Validated learning, that's what we're after. So, we need to have a clearly articulated hypothesis for a treatment. And the hypothesis is, by changing these things, I think it will have this effect on the user, and which will result in whatever increased number of signups. And so you basically you write down what you know about your customer and your hypothesis as to that these changes will minimize friction, improve eye flow, and the improved copy makes it more clear why our service is beneficial, and that's hence more signups follow. So once you get the test result, let's say your treatment wins, Now you have an idea as to why. And everybody in your company, it's a small team, you need to be aware of your customer theory, what you know about the customer. So if it's not that one guy just randomly sets up tests and then says, hey, version B1, woo, good. And the rest of the team is like, yeah, rocking. So, but we have no idea where to go from here. So we're always improving our customer theory bit by bit.
Yeah.
So let me bring you an example. So a landing page we were working on, we were first optimizing copy. We were writing different headlines and subheadlines and bullet points until we found that we tried simple, straightforward language. This is a service, this is what you get. We tried very marketing, just like all these benefits, and we put the benefits that our target market told us in the survey, that these are the benefits that matter the most to them. So it wasn't made up BS. They actually wanted these benefits. So we made a benefit-oriented headline. There were other versions. And we run, I think, 2 or 3 follow-up tests on it. And the simple, straightforward language won every time. But, okay, so now our customer theory improved by thinking, hey, simple, straightforward approach works for this particular customer. Now, what we did was, what if we cut down our page length, made it shorter, so it would make it even more simpler? We ran a test, we won, like in 45% lift or something.
So your test is based on your theory now.
Exactly. So, and again, we learned, wow, our hypothesis was right, making it the page simpler worked. And now it was like a 7-step funnel or something. And so using that insight, simple, direct, that works. And that's how all the follow-up tests were also bringing in results. Had we not had a hypothesis, just randomly test, button here or there, you would just end up wasting so much time because you're testing random crap that doesn't matter.
Yeah, it seems like hypothesis is kind of in the same category as the user testing, watching them on the site, doing the heat maps, because you're actually getting insights into why, not just what.
Exactly right.
And
exactly
then you can
right.
Because now when you have insights and real knowledge, you're able to make decisions at a high level and execute a direction, and you're actually leading, you're moving, you're not just being a slave of data.
And it's not about convergence anymore. You can make better product decisions, because you know what the people want and how they want it.
Yeah, because when it comes to creating a new feature, you can't A/B test big features. It's going to take months of development. You have to bet the farm on where you're going, and there's no way to A/B test it sometimes. And your insights are what's going to allow you to succeed, right?
Exactly. So it's always about learning and insights.
Yeah, that's great. The next mistake you see, and this is a great one, is that test data is not sent to Google Analytics. We have data inside of Optimizely and Visual Website. So why do we need to send it to Google Analytics?
Yeah, so that's a point I briefly mentioned earlier. That even if your test loses, we want to know, averages lie. Averages are never correct, because if we have a 30-year-old male from Toronto and a 16-year-old female from California, the average is a sexually confused 23-year-old in Iowa or something. Right?
That's awesome.
So averages lie. So we need to go deeper and see what is happening in segments. And segments like new versus returning. Segments like traffic sources, came from Google search, came from this pay-per-click, came from this landing page, whatever. Segments like demographics. If you have it switched on in Google Analytics, you can do that. Or a custom segment, returning buyers. Like lots of segments. And you want to see how version A and version B performed across different segments. Because again, when you see that your version, on average, your version B won or lost, but it won especially high for returning visitors or people who come from your pay-per-click campaigns, that's an insight.
Yeah.
And hey, that copy we have on all our AdWords ads, that seems to be working and driving qualified traffic. So why don't we use the same copy on, across mediums?
Yeah, no, it makes a lot of sense. The next one is that the mistake number 6, precious time and traffic are wasted on stupid tests. What's a stupid test? So we don't do them.
Stupid test is when you do the spaghetti method. It's like, hey, let's test something. I mean, what if we make the button green? So never test colors ever. I mean, colors are never going to give you a lift.
Yeah,
I mean,
and if
of
they
course,
do, your
you
whole
will
site's
find
broken
color A/B
anyway.
tests, right? You will find color A/B tests on Google if you search, but these are always no-brainers because it's about visual hierarchy. Does your button stand out or not? If your web layout is green and your button is green, it doesn't stand out. By making it red or whatever other color, it stands out more. So if you had tested green button versus red button, the button that stands out more would have won. But you don't need to test it; just implement right away.
Yeah.
So stupid test is a random idea. Don't test random idea, and you need to also know which page to run tests on. So that comes down to funnel, and I hope everybody has a funnel set up in their Google Analytics, because you can see the drop off per step, and you will where is the biggest drop off. That's where the problem is, because every website is like a leaking bucket, and you need to know where are the holes. And also you want to test closer to the money. So not your homepage first, but your checkout page first.
Because they got further, so if you optimize that,
Exactly,
you're
so
optimizing a
more
really warm
qualified
lead.
traffic there. So if you're, let's say, on checkout page right now, you have 75% people put in the credit card and pay you. If you could increase that to 90%, which is very typical actually for transaction pages, you can do 95% conversions there. That's way bigger impact on your bottom line right away than testing the headline. Headline on your homepage.
Okay. See,
So
the headline seems like it'd be the place to start, because it's just kind of, that's what you see when you come to the site,
Yeah, and of course there are multiple approaches here. So if you have a funnel also, some people say that you should start widening the funnel from the beginning, so more people in and drive down. But if the goal is to basically you need to see what are the drop-off rates at each step. So let's say home, features, pricing, enter credit card, done. So you look at the drop-off rate. So if on the credit card page I would see conversions 75% end up paying, I would say no, this is where we test. And on the homepage, how many people from the homepage go on? A homepage of course will have the most traffic. It's easy to test. But you need to assess the drop-off rates for each step, individually.
Yeah. No, those are great insights. The next one you already talked about, they give up after the first test fails. So you do a test, just tweak it, redo it, try again, because like you said, it's the second, third, fourth
keep
try.
improving your customer theory and run follow-up tests, because your hunches might be right, and a loser might be a winner if you just change some little things, tweak the copy, add something, remove something.
Yeah, it seems like it's a patience game. Like, this isn't move fast and it's really fun.
Yeah.
It's slow, let's watch the paint dry, but get real results, isn't it?
It is. Because even guys with a lot of traffic, have customers that do millions of uniques a month. Even there, it's a maximum of 4 tests per month. It's because you can't have overlapping tests. Tests with overlapping traffic. Of course, if there are isolated areas within your site, then you can run multiple tests at the same time.
Yeah, that's actually one of your mistakes is, running tests on overlapping traffic. Now, why is that?
Right,
why is it
right.
you can't run a test on this part of the site and that part of the site with the same traffic? What's the problem there?
So yeah, if you have a typical SaaS site, you run a headline test on your homepage and then some test on your credit card payment page and features page. So that
seems reasonable.
3 tests running. But actually, what's happening is that the people who will finally end on the credit card page and see either A or B of the credit card page, you don't know which homepage they saw, and you don't know which pricing page they saw, and so on. So actually, there is no learning here. Your test data is skewed because there are too many variables here.
Yeah, so you don't know what made the change and what made them check out.
Exactly right. So, because it matters, like what they saw on each step before paying matters to the conversion. So sometimes, let's say we have a 4-step funnel, and version B gets more people from homepage to the second step, but actually version A gets more transactions at the end. So that happens. So you need to look at the whole funnel here. So that is why. So of course, Optimizely has a great feature called multi-page experiments, where you can change multiple pages at once. So meaning we're testing a completely new funnel versus the old funnel.
I gotcha. But
So
you need a
so
lot of
users
traffic for
see,
that, right?
yeah, exactly. So users see either only the old funnel pages or only the new funnel pages. There's no mix and match here. So that is a great way to test, more pages at a time.
No, that really helps understand why and then how to do it if you're going to. Another thing you mentioned is a mistake that people don't understand: false positives. And I think what you just said leads to false positives, doesn't it? When they test a lot of different things.
If you have three, tests running with overlapping traffic, there's a very high chance that your winner is actually a false positive. It's not a false positive. It's not an actual winner. Or another way is that if you're doing A/B testing, but you get greedy, hey, why stop there? Why not do A, B, C, D, E, F, G testing? More versions at a time. So the problem with that is that with every additional variation that you add, you increase the chance of false positives. That's just how statistics work. So I recommend that you limit yourself to either A/B or ABC testing, because also you learn faster, because your test duration is shorter. Either A or B wins, and you look at the segments and you improve your customer theory, and you can create a better test, a follow-up test that's better. Otherwise, if you test 6 different variations, even if you get a real winner at the end, that test takes 7 times longer. You could have learned so much more in between.
Yeah, especially with your threshold of wanting 95%, accuracy. It takes, if you're going to test 10 different variations, that's going to take forever to be that sure that one of them is going to work.
Don't recommend that.
Yeah. And then number 10, the mistake is ignoring small gains. Something that is 3% better. We're 95% sure it's 3% better. So they just don't want to implement it because it takes time, and who cares about 3%, right?
Exactly. So, if you're just starting out, you can go for the really big wins, like 100% win or 50% win. But eventually your site is going to be pretty good. After doing this for a while, and after you know quite a bit about your customer and run tests and so on. So then you stop achieving those, 25% lifts. Law of diminishing returns kicks in. But the testing is not over. So even now you start getting wins like this, 4% improvement, 5% improvement, 8% improvement. And, compounding interest, the way it works is that if you improve your site conversion rate 5% per month for 12 months, that's 80% uplift for the whole year. Wow. 80% is a lot. So law of compounding interest. So don't ignore the small gains. Implement them and just build on it.
Yeah. And that kind of leads into the next mistake, which is not running tests all the time. If you're running tests all the time, it's okay if the gains are small because you're always adding to that pool of gains.
Exactly right. So if you're some tests take a long time to implement. Like if you're testing a completely new design, it takes time for the designers to do it and whatever. So meanwhile, while you're waiting for the big tests or while you're designing treatments, you can test small but influential stuff. Like copy change is really easy to set up a copy test. But having a hypothesis mind, trying to understand which language speaks better to the customer, because traffic is a very precious resource. And we're after learning here. So every day that you have a traffic coming to your site that is not going through a test, you're not learning. You're just wasting that traffic.
Yeah, that's a good point.
So you should always have a test going. Even not every test has to be complicated. Some small, easy tests like testing copy can lead to very great insights.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you so much for kind of walking us through those 11 mistakes. And
my
honestly,
pleasure.
Pep, this has been such a great interview. And I have 2 final questions for you here. The first one might be the wrong question to ask, so forgive me if it is. You can tell me if it doesn't have a place. But in your experience with conversion optimization, is there a simple thing that a lot of people can do to get gains? And I guess I'm asking, is there a silver bullet to start with? Is there one thing that it's almost always wrong, it's pretty simple to fix, and it usually works out pretty well?
Yeah. There is one thing that is kind of universal, and that is the clarity of your value proposition. And your offer on your homepage or any major landing page where the traffic is entering your site. Do users understand what is the site about, what they can do here, and why should they do it? Sometimes it's like, great local marketing. Sign up here. I mean, sign up for what?
Uh-huh.
It's like if confused mind hesitates, and by improving clarity in your copy, in your headlines, subheadlines, whatever copy you have there, your clarity trumps persuasion, and clarity leads to higher conversion. So
Yeah.
it's the easiest thing to do is like go to Google Analytics, open up the landing pages report, look at your top 10 landing pages, and go to those pages. Like if I'm cold traffic, never been to your site before, landing on this page, do I understand what the site is, what can I do here, and why should I do it? So
That's great. What was it? Confused minds hesitate. Is that the quote?
yeah, exactly.
It reminds me. I remember somebody talking about why Gilligan's Island, the intro theme music, always sang about the entire story up to that point. So it talks about their travels. It talks about their shipwreck. And the guy that they asked him, well, why is that? Because he had multiple shows and they all did that. He said confused people can't laugh. So he had to catch them up on everything that happened before that episode every time. And that's why these theme songs are about the whole experience. And that's kind of the same thing. If they're confused when they're on your landing page, they hesitate. They can't get in the flow of what's going on because they're always wondering, well, what does that mean?
Right.
How is it doing
most
that?
Most people don't bother to figure it out. So
if you give them work, they can't laugh, they can't buy, they can't do anything productive. Don't give them work. Tell them exactly what you're going to do for them as clearly as humanly possible. All right, last question I have for you. What's the best advice you have for any startup that's trying to grow? And it's a vague question. You can take it any direction you want.
Yeah, best. I guess I'm gonna have to go with the typical talk to your customers answer here, because that is where you get the best insights. And in person, in-person interviews and in-person user tests. That's where you get the biggest insight for improving conversions and getting more customers.
That's awesome, Pep. Thank you so much again for coming on Growth Hacker TV.
My pleasure. So if you have any follow-up questions, come see me at conversionxl.com.
Yeah, incredible blog with great content. Thanks again.
Thank you.